Good morning. My name's Don Duggan, and I'm with the Help Desk Operations team with DRLS and CDER. I'm going to be talking about labeler code requests today. So we have some learning objectives. We're going to talk about who needs a labeler code and when should a firm apply for a labeler code. We're going to talk about the steps required to obtain a labeler code and also why it's important to confirm the labeler code. So what is the labeler code process? Well, a manufacturer or private label distributor requests a labeler code from the FDA using CDER Direct. The FDA will go ahead and receive that submission. We will process it manually, and then we'll send an email with the assigned labeler code number and confirmation instructions back to the firm. Then the firm will go ahead and send back a confirmation labeler code, which is really just a labeler code request with the same set ID, a different root ID. The version number is one higher than the last accepted submission, and they fill in the assigned labeler code. So that's all a confirmation labeler code is. But it's extremely important because that's how our system can connect you to your labeler code. Without that confirmation SPL, there is no connection between you and your assigned labeler code. And once that confirmation SPL has been accepted by the system, you can, as a firm, begin to list drugs. So, who needs a labeler code? It's required by any firm wishing to sell a drug under their name in the United States. And that includes both manufacturers and private label distributors, or PLDs. And they both require a labeler code, and they both must list their products under their own labeler code. So a product made by a contract manufacturer, or a CMO, and distributed by a PLD must be listed by both organizations. However, they will be listing in different categories. Only drug products sold to consumers are listed on the NDC directory. So the CMO listings you will not see on the NDC directory. Those are for FDA internal purposes. The labeler code and the NDC number. So how are they related? Well, as you can see in this diagram, the labeler code is first, and it's 5 digits. The product code comes next, and that's 3 digits. And the package code is last, and that's 2 digits. Now this is one configuration we call the 532 configuration. There's also another configuration you can use, 541, which is obviously a product. The labeler code is the same, 5 digits, product code is 4, and the package code is 1 digit. Both of these either of these configurations will give you, allow you to list many products, and you should think about which configuration would work best for you and your company. One thing to consider, though, is that once you do choose a configuration, that is the configuration for that labeler code. So everything that you label under that labeler code must be the same configuration. The other thing I guess I would throw in here is that the product code and the package code, those make up the NDC number. So you will be making those numbers up yourself. We do not assign those numbers, so we only assign the labeler code, and then you have the option to put in whatever you want for the product and package codes. So when is the best time to apply for a labeler code? Well, it must be submitted and completed prior to listing a drug product, but how much prior? I would say about 30 days would be good, just because we're getting a lot of volume, and this will ensure that you will have plenty of time to have it both assigned and confirmed and listed. So 30 days before you'd like to have the product listed would be a great time to go ahead and do that. Now, if you don't have drug products to list, if you have investigational new drugs, if you have supplements, you're not going to be using an NDC for those things, so you will not need a labeler code. So I guess when would be never. So how many labeler codes does a firm need? I would say one. One is all you normally need. They are not specific to a site. They are specific to the company. And whereas DUNS and FEIs are site-specific, and again, labeler codes are company-specific. So generally you need one unless you run out of numbers. If you run out of numbers, then an additional labeler code can be assigned, but we'd ask that you email us first. So, how do we request the labeler code? Well, you go into CDER Direct, and here we are. We're in CDER Direct right here. And if you'll notice on the left-hand side there, highlighted, is NDC labeler code request. So we're just going to go ahead and click on that. Now we come to the next screen where we get a chance to create a new submission. So we're going to go to the right-hand portion of the screen there where it says Create New / Upload File. And we're going to click on Create New. And little message is going to come up and just say, hey, this is how long it takes, up to this many days, and if you don't use it within 2 years, your labeler code will be inactivated, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Just go ahead and click OK here. So now we're going to come here to this screen, and we're going to go ahead and select the Create New rather than Import. And we're going to click Continue. And now it's time to fill in your data. So the top portion, the header details, will be filled out already. And what you'll need to do is fill out the labeler details, the labeler contact address. So in some cases, that contact address is actually going to be the physical address. And if that's the case, what you want to do is make sure that your Dun & Bradstreet information and your labeler contact address are the same exactly. And of course, please double check your contact phone and especially that email. Make sure they're correct. Obviously, also want to mention the labeler name. It's got to be what's in Dun & Bradstreet. Obviously, you can use a DBA, a Doing Business As, but make sure that's registered with Dun & Bradstreet. Okay. So as we go down the form, we come to something called additional information. So this is the labeler address. This is the physical address that we're talking about. And the physical address here can be the same as the contact address, as I said. So just go ahead and check the box, and then you can fill that in. And make sure that that's also the same as Dun & Bradstreet, because that's how we validate. And of course, if you're a foreign firm, to the USA, please go ahead and fill out the U.S. agent information. Now we get to the business operation and qualifier portion, and if you notice, you've got choices here, and you could be a distributor, you could be a manufacturer. You may need more than one business operation, right? You might be a manufacturer who also distributes or labels or packages. So you're going to go ahead and check the blue plus sign there, and you can add in operations. Okay, so for example, I should also say the qualifier, you get a choice of qualifier depending on which business operation it is. So go ahead and choose that qualifier. And once you've done that, you can move on. However, if you don't choose to fill in the additional information, what happens is you'll get an email from us asking that you provide additional information. So basically, this is the same information, the name of the firm, this is the physical address, the type of business, and the type of drug products, which is that qualifier, remember, and the U.S. agent information if required. Okay, after you have all that information filled in, now you're ready to submit to the FDA. So what you're going to do is, providing that you don't want to save this as a draft, because as you look at the top there, you could save this as a draft, but let's go ahead, we would save and validate it. So we would click on that, and it would come back. Hopefully everything is fine. And once that's done, we would then go ahead and click on the black button, which is Submit the SPL. Okay. Now, if there was an error, you would want to take a screenshot of that error. But first, we would ask you to go ahead and take a look and see if you can figure out how to fix the error yourself. Sometimes people do get an issue with the Dun & Bradstreet address not being the same or being incorrect. And if they think it's incorrect, we ask them to go check the Dun & Bradstreet record, because sometimes the Dun & Bradstreet record is not what they think it is. So we would ask you to check that. That's a common error here. But once it's submitted, you're good to go. And at this point, it's just time to wait for us to process it and get back to you. And there is a new feature in CDER Direct with request progress. So it's now more real time. So what you can see here is there's been an assignment and a confirmation is required. So what you would do is you would click on Submission Accepted there to open that up. And when you do, you're going to see something like this, and you're going to notice that the version number has changed and your root ID is new, and you simply need to go ahead and put in the labeler code, and at that point you're going to want to go ahead and save it and submit it to us. And then once we have accepted this submission, you would then be allowed to go ahead and list your product. This is what our emails look like. Pretty basic. Underneath, you first, of course, have the dates and the DUNS and the labeler code assigned. Then it comes into how to confirm the labeler code. So it's just got some, but I've just shown you how. With CDER Direct, you just go in and click on the Submission Accepted, and they've almost prepared everything for you. Just check everything's there, make sure there's a labeler code number in there, and save and submit. So it's not that difficult. But this is for folks who are using other types of tools. Okay, rejections. Like life, in labeler codes, there are rejections. And so I want to go over the reasons for rejections and how to fix it. So the first one would be you're not required to list drugs. So if you're listing and you've got an investigational new drug, say, or you're a supplement firm, supplements don't get NDC codes. So you would not be required to list. So you would just have nothing to do. If you already had a labeler code assigned to you, if that was the situation, then you would not need another labeler code most likely. Again, if you do run out of numbers, please email us and we can go ahead and assign you a second labeler code. Invalid contact information. So if you've given us invalid contact information or invalid information in your form, then that needs to be corrected and then resubmitted to us, because what happens is whatever you send us becomes the record, and we don't go in and change anybody's record. Only you can do that, and the way you do that is through SPL submissions. So you would have to correct that information and send in a new labeler code request submission. You could email us, though, and let us know that it's back in the queue so we can get to it quicker rather than having you wait the full time in the queue again. The other situation with information is if your information doesn't match the D&B data, Dun & Bradstreet data. If that's the case, if the Dun & Bradstreet data is actually correct and your information that you've provided is incorrect, then you must change your information. If, however, that the D&B data is actually incorrect, then you'll need to contact D&B and you'll have to get that information corrected. And then once it has happened, you should contact us, and then we'll go ahead and reprocess your request, because then it will match the data. So that would be fine. If your labeler code is automatically inactivated, however, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, there's other steps to take, and those will be somebody, Puii, will actually go over that. If it's an animal drug, then you're going to need to submit a labeler code request for an animal drug, and we do not handle that here. So, okay, moving on. When should labeler code information be updated? We'd like it as soon as possible. However, within 30 calendar days is what the regs say. So, within 30 calendar days. We do use this information whenever communicating regarding listings and things like that, so it's important that you get it up to date as soon as you can. Mergers and acquisitions. We do realize that these are all different. However, this is a basic case, I guess, where you'd have two companies that are merging and they're changing their name to a different company name. So A and B are merging and they're changing their name to Company C. In addition, they've decided to keep Company A's labeler code. Now, when you do this, it would probably be a great idea to email us and ask us and tell us of your plans, and that way we could advise you if that was the right way to go. Certainly, I would do that if I were in your position. But in this case, Company A would update their labeler code information to include the new name and any other updates. Drug listing must be updated to reflect the new labeler name. So they're going to go ahead and they're updating their labeler code to Company C, and then they would then have to change their drug listings to show that Company C is now the labeler. Company B, on the other hand, they would discontinue all the listings associated with their old labeler code, and they would relist them under Company C's labeler code. And then they would go back and inactivate their labeler code. So, very important to know what your Dun & Bradstreet data is before you apply for a labeler code, or really anything with the FDA. We use that because we validate against that. So all our systems will check every time you send something in. So you're going to want to make sure that that's correct. And double check your data, all the data that you send us, not just for labeler codes, but everything you send us. Please double check it. Sometimes you can put in incorrect data, particularly in listings, and it can result in what's called an override. You'll need an override to make the correction. And that can take a very long time. So please double check your data. Confirm the labeler code, of course. And contact us with questions if you have it. I know I said don't contact us about status, but if you have questions on how to do things, please, you can contact us. We would like, in the event of an error message, please give us a screenshot of the error message. And please don't use outdated phone numbers or email addresses. I can't tell you how many times we reject a labeler code and then someone comes back and says, oh yeah, this has changed. So if you want to do it right the first time, double check everything, make sure everything's correct. It's not a lot of information really with a labeler code request, and just do that before you send it in, and things will go a lot better for everyone. So now we're into the challenge questions. Labeler code information, including the name, physical address, email address, and other contact information, must be updated within 60 days, 90 days, or 30 days, or every June and December. It is 30 days. So, but while we say 30 days, again, we'd like it sooner than that, but 30 days is what the regulations say. The physical address must match the Dun & Bradstreet record exactly. True or false? True. Why? Because we validate the address that you provide with the D&B record. So if something's amiss, if it's the incorrect name, if it's the wrong city, if it's the wrong zip code, or any address, I would put it exactly how it is in the Dun & Bradstreet record. That way you ensure that you will not have a problem. Okay. Number 3, If a company has 3 locations, how many labeler codes do they need? Well, if you said 3 labeler codes, you weren't listening. It's actually 1 labeler code is all you need. And again, you can use that for different sites. It's company specific, and so that's why you only need 1, unless you run out of numbers, and then you'll email us for a second labeler code. Okay. So DRLS at fda.hhs.gov, you'll see that a lot, and that's where you can send inquiries to us. However, if you've sent your SPL through the ESG and you need status on that, you're going to have to contact the SPL coordinator at sbl@fda.hhs.gov. We've got links to our instructions and points of contact here. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Puii, and I'm here from Drug Registration and Listing, and today we will be discussing labeler code inactivation. Here's a brief overview of what we will be going over in terms of labeler code inactivation process. We will go over both the FDA and industry inactivation process. Then we will move on to how a labeler code can be inactivated, as well as how to reactivate a labeler code, and we will wrap up with some challenge questions. Don already went over labeler code requests, so this slide is a quick review to let you know that labeler code requests must be submitted when first introducing product into commercial distribution. If you don't have to list any drugs with FDA, you should not apply for a labeler code, since labeler codes that are not used by listing a drug product are automatically inactivated after 24 months. First, we will go over the process of FDA-initiated labeler code inactivation. So before a labeler code is inactivated, an email is sent to the point of contact associated with the labeler code assignment to let the firm know that in 30 days, the labeler code will be inactivated unless the company lists a product or provide a valid reason. This is a sample of what the verification email looks like. So because the FDA uses the contact information provided in the labeler code request for any official communication regarding the listing or labeler code, such as this letter, it is very important that any changes regarding the labeler information is updated. So if the company's labeler contact is not updated, you will not receive an important notification email such as this. So please make every effort to ensure that labeler code information is updated. In the verification email response, we ask that you respond within 30 days of receipt and to state the reason for your continued need for this labeler code. If you no longer manufacture or distribute, you should state that in your response, or if you believe you need an active labeler code, you should provide the reason. So for example, if you have a pending NDA or ANDA, you can provide that information in your response, and the DRLS staff will review the response that has been provided. As mentioned in the previous slide, labeler codes that have no products listed for 2 years are sent a notification 30 days prior to inactivation. So if there is no response to the notification, then the labeler code will be inactivated. Once the labeler code is inactivated, the labeler contact will receive an email like this one to notify the firm that the FDA has inactivated the labeler code. And in the email, we also provide information on how to reactivate a labeler code. We will go over that. So it is important to note that only the FDA is able to reactivate an FDA-initiated labeler code inactivation. To reactivate a labeler code, you can start by sending an email to the DRLS staff at the email address provided here, which is edrls@fda.hhs.gov with the following information: product name, active ingredient or ingredients, the strength, labeling, the anticipated start marketing date of the drug, and the intended NDC or NDCs for the products. There are a number of reasons why industry-initiated labeler code inactivation occurs, such as a company going out of business or a change in business, if a merger or acquisition occurs, or the pending application did not get approved by the FDA. These are all situations where a company would inactivate their labeler code. Labeler code inactivation can be completed in just a few easy steps. The first step, actually step 1 I provided here, is probably step 2. So your first step is to log into CDER Direct. Once you log in, you will open the previously submitted and accepted labeler code request. And once you open that, you will see a screen similar to what you see here. And you will click on Create New Version. Once you click on that, you will have the option to select the document type here. The drop-down menu has 2 document types. One is the labeler code request, and the other one is NDC labeler code inactivation. So you can click on NDC labeler code inactivation and submit the SPL. It's that simple. So now that we've gone over why and how a labeler code is inactivated by industry, we will go over how to reactivate industry-initiated inactivation. So you've just inactivated your labeler code, and let's say you're ready to list a product and you're ready to reactivate your labeler code. The first step is to open the previous SPL file using the same set ID, and you can submit a labeler code request with the labeler code you want to reactivate and submit SPL. It is important to know that industry can only reactivate the same labeler code it had inactivated in the past. Now that we've gone over FDA and industry inactivation process, we will go over a couple of challenge questions to test your knowledge. First question is, labeler code verification email must be responded within 60 days, B, 90 days, C, 30 days, and D, every June and December. And the answer is C, 30 days. You all got that correct. Okay, moving on to question 2. Labeler codes that do not have any NDCs listed are automatically inactivated after A, 12 months, B, 6 months, or C, 24 months. If you answered C, you are correct. If you answered A or B, you can listen to the presentation again. In closing, here's a summary of what we discussed. Labeler codes that do not have any drugs listed are automatically inactivated after 24 months. before inactivation, an email is sent to the labeler contact to respond within 30 days to inactivate a labeler code. You can submit a labeler code inactivation, and to reactivate a labeler code inactivated by the FDA, you can email DRLS@fda.hhs.gov. While everything we discussed is relevant and important, this should be the main takeaway from this content. If you don't have to list any drugs with the FDA, you don't need to apply for a labeler code, since labeler codes that are not used by listing a drug product are automatically inactivated after 24 months. So it is important to know that you should only apply when you are ready, so you can eliminate the process of having to go through this entire steps that we discussed. And that brings us to the end. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at the email address provided here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, this is Paul Lobach, Director of the Drug Registration and Listing Staff, and we're now going to take a little bit of time to do some Q&A. Before I get to that, I just want to first remind both Puii and Don, who will be answering some of these questions, please remember to stay, just for the sake of passing the ball back and forth, stay muted until you talk, and then once you're done talking, mute, and I'll do the same on my end. We have already received well over 100 questions, so I'll just apologize right now to those who have already asked questions and to all the questions that are going to be asked today. We won't get to all of them. I'm going to try and group lots of questions together that are about relatively the same subject, so please listen for similar wording and similar style questions, and we hope to answer your questions specifically. And also, for now, for this session, I'm going to focus on the labeler code questions and a couple of questions that were for me in my presentation. A lot of you are already asking registration type area questions and subjects, and some are asking listing questions, and some are about listing inactivation. Some are about the NDC directory. We have presentations all day, and I ask you to hold those questions until those presentations come, because I think we can answer some of those questions for you ahead of time. So keep an eye out for that. We may, if we have some time, we may get into the others, and in other sessions, we may loop back around and get a few unanswered ones from a previous question, or from a previous session. So today, as I said, or right now, let's go ahead and just dive right into some of the labeler code session questions here. And I will begin with Puii, who, Puii, how, let's see, let me get back to once the labeler code reactivation request is sent to DRLS, how much time would it take for the reactivation of the labeler code?
Thank you. That's a good question. We get that often in the DRLS inbox. So once the labeler code is activated by the FDA, it should take just 24 hours for the labeler code to be reactivated and go through the validation process. It is important to know that once we reactivate the labeler code, you will not receive an email or notification to let you know that the labeler code is active. However, you can check the status of your the labeler code by accessing the published list of NDC NRIC labeler code list that is available on the FDA website. I can provide the link in the Q&A below, but it's in fda.gov in DRLS SPL, one of those sites, we provide a list that provides a list of all the active labeler codes.
Thank you. This next one is for Don, and there's a few about this. The question specifically is, what is the FDA web address to apply for an NDC, to apply for a labeler code? And I'll just broaden that into, how does one request it? Can you go ahead and sort of review that again and remind people, where do they go to submit a labeler code request?
Okay, sure. What you would do is you would first, you want to use CDER Direct, I think, and you would log into CDER Direct, and on the left-hand side, when you log into CDER Direct, you'll see where it says you can request a labeler code, and you would simply click on that, and it would bring up the form within CDER Direct for you to fill out to apply for a labeler code. Is it clear?
Yeah, no, that's great. I will add just a little to that. Again, to everybody, to our audience, the focus and subject of this conference is DRLS and using CDER Direct. There are other avenues, of course, to create and submit these SPL files. FDA also offers a form called the X form, which is fewer bells and whistles, but might have some additional functionality that other firms are looking for. So that's a perfectly acceptable avenue to submit, to create there and submit through the web trader. There are also third-party softwares and consultants out there that can do this as well. So, but again, you will hear a lot about CDER Direct. That is the application on the FDA website that our office administers and focuses on. The next one is for me, and I'm going to group a whole bunch of questions together. They're about hand sanitizers. Wow, big surprise here. It's a big subject this year. I'll start off by saying, any question about what's allowed to go into a hand sanitizer, what sanitizers are covered by the guidances that came out this past spring, things about hand sanitizers not being approved and all that. We won't get into that today. We're trying to make this more of a process and tool, instructional webinar. But you can submit all those questions to our, we have a special help desk for that, an email address, and I'll repeat it here, and I'll enter it into the Q&A, into the chat box there. It's COVID-19-hand-sanitizers, plural, at fda.hhs.gov. And that's our policy, folks, and they'll be happy to answer all your hand sanitizer questions. Specifically here, though, there were a couple of questions about my presentation, and I apologize for some of the little glitches and rewinds in there. We had, thanks to the technical folks for fixing that. The question is, do we expect a lot of these hand sanitizer firms, these non-traditional drug manufacturers, to deregister by the end of the year? And the answer is yes. We do expect a certain number to, or at least some number, I should say. We don't know how many will deregister. We also don't know whether the new OTC manufacturer user fees that will kick in at the end of the year, we don't know how much that will affect companies' decisions to continue on, to renew and continue to operate as drug manufacturers into the new year. So that remains to be seen. I mentioned it in my one slide, in that we also expect a lot of companies who don't renew their registration, who choose not to go on, to simply not do anything and just let all their records expire. That happens in a normal year without all the additional hand sanitizer manufacturers. A lot of companies just decide, we're not going to do this anymore, or we're not required to register anymore. We're just not going to file anything. And I have that one slide in there with the line about please don't just let your records expire. It really helps us get a better picture of what's out there, and it saves us a little bit of work, admittedly. There's some self-serving message in here. But if you can specifically deregister and delist your products, it'll get the FDA off your back a little sooner than that, and it helps us. It gives us a more accurate picture of what's out there. So your cooperation with that is appreciated. Lots of questions, Don, about multiple labeler codes. So I'll just sort of summarize or paraphrase a lot of them. And one, can a company have more than one labeler code, and why does the FDA restrict or try to recommend against multiple labeler codes?
Well, one thing is you spoke of it earlier. We used about 9 years worth of labeler codes in 6 months, primarily, I guess, for hand sanitizer firms, and so we are getting a little lean. And we never do want to reuse the labeler code because we don't want any confusion, for pharmacists and people like that that fill your drugs prescriptions. So we try to, there's no point in giving out labeler codes that people don't use, and it's not really meant for firms to have as many labeler codes as they have divisions or something like that. This is really for the FDA and for public health, and so that's the reason we don't want to give out labeler codes needlessly.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's what I was hoping you'd say, and I'll add to that myself. The reason we're, quote, running out, for those who aren't aware, there's a finite universe of 10-digit NDC codes out there, and we're already up into assigning the 80,000 numbers for labeler codes now. And if a company is assigned a labeler code and they only use 3, 4, 5, even 100 products out of what's available under that labeler code. Remember, a labeler code can have 1,000, even 10,000 different products underneath it if you choose the right configuration. A lot of NDC, potential drug identifying numbers, these NDC codes are just being thrown out and will never be used. And we have to prepare for the future and a potential expansion or some method of how to handle NDC numbers once we reach 99,999 for the labeler code. So we're being applying a little more scrutiny to our labeler code requests, especially as Don just said and I mentioned earlier, especially since we've used up many years of worth of available labeler codes in just 1 year. Thank you. The next question, this gets in a little bit toward the listing presentation, but it does have to do with labeler codes. And since Don mentioned it, we've gotten several questions on what's required of PLDs, private label distributors, versus contract manufacturers. So I'll kick this over to Puii. Puii, can you just review, say two companies are together, one's the private label distributor and one's the contract manufacturer for that private label distributor. What do they have to do? Which one has to register? Which one has to get a labeler code and list? Can you take that?
Okay, so with PLDs and contract manufacturers, both the CMO and the PLD must list their product with the FDA. They each need to get their own labeler codes. The CMO will need to have request their own labeler code and list the product under their own labeler code. And the same with the PLD, will need to list the product under their own labeler code However, for the PLDs, they should not register their establishment, since registration is only for companies that are manufacturing. Reggie will go over that in a little bit, but as far as PLD and CMOs, both have to request their own labeler codes.
Great, thanks. Don, how do you transfer an existing labeler code from one company to another? What do you have to do to the labeler code request file?
Okay, you're going to need to update your labeler code file with the new information. So you'll go into CDER Direct and you'll bring up, you'll open the last accepted submission, and then in there you will go ahead and you will make any kinds of changes that you need to make. And once you've made those changes, you're going to go ahead and save it and send it in. What we have noticed sometimes is when people, rather than changing the information on their labeler code, what they'll do is they'll ask for another labeler code. And you don't need to do that. You simply need to go in, update the information on the labeler code, save it, and go ahead and send that in. And like I said, we cannot change information, so sometimes we'll get emails from people, can you change this information? And we can't, because we can't touch the data ourselves. So that has to come from you, and all changes in the data will come from an updated or an SPL, which will update the information.
Thanks. I'll even add to that, in addition to just updating the name and the DUNS number as appropriate on the labeler code assignment, please again make sure to keep your contact information up to date on those labeler code submissions. We do use those, and we use them quite often to send out reminders and regulatory communications. So make sure it's someone either in your company or someone that represents your company that can be responsible enough to handle those and forward those as necessary. We're down to our last minute. I'm going to do two quick hitters here. Next one is for Puii. Puii, does a labeler code submission apply, or does let me rephrase this. Let me read the question for whomever asked it. Labeler code submission is applicable to bulk ingredients and intermediates, and I'll rephrase that to say, does the manufacturer of bulk ingredients and intermediates need a labeler code and must list?
Yes, any company that is any manufacturer, anyone processing a product, whether it's API or contract CMOs, they need to list their products, so they will have to request a labeler code under their own company.
Thanks, and I'll add to that real quick. If the person means by intermediate something that's pre-API, pre-active ingredient, those do not need to be listed, and if that's all you're making, you do not need to register and list. If by intermediates you mean some in-process drug after the API but before it's finished and packaged, then yes, those must be listed. And I know we're at 0, but I want to get one more important question in before we move on. This is for Don. Someone asks when to request the labeler code if a BLA is under review and expected to be approved. So Don, you talked about when, how early to file. Can you just remind everybody how early to file for that?
Sure. I would say this, that we're asking folks because of the kind of historic volume that we've been dealing with, we're asking people to send in your requests within 30 days or around 30 days out. So if you expect something to go on the market 30 days from now, today would be a good day to do that. I would say this, though, if it's a situation and you've been caught unawares and you need a labeler code and and you're about to go live with your drug and it's about to be approved, then email us. Okay, so we know that it's a special situation. The other thing I would say is we have, because of the historic volume and the thousands and thousands of labeler codes that we have processed over the last few months, we did work with our programmers and they were quite helpful in redesigning some of the process flow of the application, so we're able to do labeler codes a little bit quicker than we have been in the past. So that has helped bring down the backlog. So we're going to hopefully keep things at a low as backlog as possible. But again, if you're in a situation and it's an urgent situation, we would like you to contact us first and let us know so we can work with you to make sure everything gets done on time.
And I will just quickly add, you can always submit earlier than 30 days. If you remember from Puii's presentation a few minutes ago, you have up to 2 years to use a labeler code before we, to list something under that labeler code before we consider or flag it for inactivation. So with that, thank you, panelists. Thank you, Puii and Don, for your time. It is now time for a break, and we will be back from the break at 10:30 Eastern Time, about a little more than 15 minutes from now. Thank you.